Welcome to Refresh, presented by Circle K. It's a time to connect, to be inspired, to learn something, and ultimately feel a bit better for this time spent together. The power of together, the power of connection is truly a superpower, and it has been at the central, our ethos at Generation W. Social connectivity is life enhancing. Research proving over and over again that our social connections are central to our overall health and well-being, and especially our mental health. So today, we're going to leave you with lots of lessons and lots of good feelings, but just a reminder, send somebody a text you normally wouldn't. Shower love someplace, right? Pick up the phone and just say hello. All of those connections are so meaningful and so, as I said, life enhancing. And here's the other thing you can do. You can come to Generation W on March 24th. Nice segue, right? We have always believed in the power of connection to lift spirits and elevate souls and bring us together in ways that are meaningful. And so we have amazing speakers, as you can see. Our theme this year is the positive and the possible. And not only would we love to have you in person, but if not, we have a great virtual presentation. So please remember that it's a day, Generation W is a day that will last you a year. Actually, I think you can attest to this, JeffriAnne, many years. And so it's why we come together also as we do for Refresh. We have 3 amazing women today with stories to share. And we also celebrate Black History Month, where communities come together across the country to recognize that we are a multicultural, multiracial nation. And I have to say, it is one of our greatest strengths, understanding and celebrating both our similarities and our differences is essential to progress and also excellence. So today, I can't tell you, if you can't tell, I am excited. You always know I'm excited. We get to spend time with an old friend, JeffriAnne Wilder, an award-winning social scientist and leading scholar specializing in diversity, race relations, and women's empowerment. She's currently a senior research scientist and director of strategic initiatives for women and girls of color at the National Center for Women and Information Technology. She's a recognized pioneer, thought leader, subject matter expert on the intersectional nature of diversity and inclusion. She is also a Generation W veteran, I'm so proud to say, appearing on our stage in both 2016. And that was a groundbreaking panel that we talked about trust. Because in our community, even then, just 6 years ago, to talk about trust and relations was incredibly risky. It felt that way. And yet we earned everybody what's trust, which has allowed to us to have ongoing convenings and communications on topics that are really important. And then there is the wonderful Marietta Colston-Davis. She's an accomplished technology sales executive at IBM, currently serving as managing director of the global Worldwide Coca Association, as well as Cardinal Health, which is interesting, those two together. She's a mom, a philanthropist, and author. We're going to find out that she was a kick-butt softball player as well. She's a change advocate who has made it her mission to inspire others and help create an equitable society where neurodiversity, and we're going to talk about neurodiversity, is understood and accepted, because we're going to be talking about that at Generation W too. How do our brains impact our behavior? And then a woman who I have been wanting to spend time with for so long, Janet Walker-Ford. Welcome, Janet. She's a nationally recognized transportation industry executive with WSP USA. Please tell me, WSP, what does that stand for?
It's really used more or less as an acronym these days, but it was a partnership that existed between Williams Sale Partnership. So
okay.
Global engineering company, you're right.
Okay, it's a leading engineering and professional services consultancy. Yes. She's responsible for driving growth and innovation, and I know because whenever I try to find her, she's never around. She's a tireless advocate for equity in transportation and the power of public transit to transform communities, which also actually, we don't think about these things, how every little aspect of our lives where we have access to, how we can make it better, how if we don't have it really inhibits us. So ladies, welcome. We're so happy to celebrate with this beautiful and amazingly successful group of women. I'd love to be able to start out, and I want to welcome all of our people here on Zoom. Hi, everybody. So great to see you. And then also on Facebook. And I always check my phone here, just so you know, when I look down, the Facebook people send me questions on my phone. We have to work on that tech, I think, Marietta. In either case, let's start off. We'd love to know a little bit more about you. You've achieved great heights as you sit here, as we look at your beautiful faces today, but tell us some about your pathway to reach Refresh today. And if we could, let's start with you, JeffriAnne.
Sure. I am so happy to be back in the Zoom room with you, Donna, and just sharing space with you and these lovely ladies today. I always, you read my bio, so folks know that I'm a sociologist by training. My focus has always been on women and girls that look like me, whether that's teaching or research or service. I currently work for NCWIT, National Center for Women in Information Technology, where I use my social science lens to ensure that we get more women and girls of color into computing and into the tech world, because we know tech is the future, right? Tech is the present, tech is the future. But I think it's really important, given that this is Black History Month and we're moving into next week, Women's History Month. I love to talk about the folks who influenced me. I was raised by a really strong Black woman, Dr. Gloria Wilder, who gave me everyday examples of Black excellence and Black humility and what it means to be, to love hard and to love your community and to be, an everyday activist, and to think about how you can be a change agent in the things that you do every single day. So I have to shout my mama out. Also, I have, some amazing aunts and cousins who literally grew up in Mississippi and were on the forefront of civil rights activism. So it really is a part of who I am. I'm very proud to say that I'm a third generation PhD. I have 2 girls myself, so I'm really excited to be a girl mom and to help mold their future and to mold them as lovers and leaders. So I'm just excited to be here and can't wait to hear more about stories and to have, jumping into this conversation.
A third generation PhD.
Can you believe that?
We have to, right? That is like, oh my God, we'll have to come back to that. Because we're going to think about, we want to talk about the first generation PhD and what your grandma went through. But before we do that, we're going to go over here to Janet and have her tell us a little bit about how she got to where she is and some of the trials and tribulations, perhaps, that you've overcome.
Sure. Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Donna. Thank you for having me on this esteemed panel. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I am a Floridian now. I've been living in Jacksonville, Florida for the last 7 years, moved from Atlanta, Georgia. And I start with that to say, in terms of my journey, I'm an Army brat. And that means I moved every 3 years or 4 years growing up. And living in Atlanta for 20 years was the longest that I lived anywhere. And then now my home in Florida. But that has shaped me in terms of my career and really my journey. My major in college was initially political science, and I changed it to information technology, JeffriAnne. I think we're all technology majors at some point. And that experience, or that decision, was driven by, at the time, there's not a lot of mentors that were women, let alone were women, and certainly not of color. So it was a white male. It was my IT professor, whatever that class was, that said, hey, I know at this time, without giving my age out, but it will be hard to believe that technology and IT will shape every industry that exists, whether you want to continue to pursue a law degree or whatever you may want to do. If you pursue this and you do really what you're doing really well in this class in math and sciences, you will have unlimited opportunities to do work. And he was absolutely right. And I did that. It changed my life. In terms of my background, I lead the national business practice for a firm called WSP USA, global engineering firm. And in that, I always focus on my opportunity and influence and position to bring in women and people of color into the industry, where we've got a deficit for transportation as well as in STEM and STEAM. So have an opportunity to work with airports, airlines, transit agencies, roads, highways, tollings, and that sort of thing in terms of what I do day to day with thought leadership and strategy and project and program delivery. I would say that getting to this role was not a, kind of a straight climb, right? It's the jungle gym, it's the back and forth and the shaping of our roles with that IT foundation and, to start with. And I would say that the passion that I have for women, as JeffriAnne mentioned, and for minorities, which is, a lot of the focus that we'll have here is driven by the fact that there's not a lot of representation in this particular field. So not in IT, not in engineering, and not in transportation. So I've benefited from some great mentors and certainly being positioned for great opportunities, but I constantly look for ways of ensuring that we are developing that next generation, obviously the current generation, let alone the next, and providing opportunities to dream big and to really envision folks that look like us in those roles. So, I think we could certainly spend a lot of time talking about kind of stepping back, resetting. I think that's part of growth and experiences. So I've had certainly a lot of opportunities to do that, as well as recognizing, if I would say lesson learned to identify one, is when you are in a role that you feel that you're not, being respected, appreciated, or not growing, you really have to make the decision about either changing the role or changing the situation. And I think that is something that women particularly stay too long or don't go after the opportunities that they are more than qualified for soon enough. And I would say that is really a very, very important, kind of maybe not necessarily a lesson learned, but strategy, I think, in career development and growth, particularly for women and women of color.
Right. So if you're not in a role, either change the role or reset.
Or hit reset. Understood. Right. Hit reset. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks so much, Janet. And Marietta.
Yes.
Round it out for us.
Okay. Well, coming up at the rear is probably the veteran on the team. I'm thrilled to see JeffriAnne and Janet, because when I spoke at these events many years ago, they would never have been on the panel. I've been doing this close to 44 years. So, I started my career, so I'm from Iowa, and you can only
By the way, and that's obvious, right?
Yes, that's very obvious.
Iowa, what do people say to you? I'm just curious.
They're like, wow, I've never met a Black person from Iowa. It's getting better now. But that is the first thing. And then they're like, so there's potatoes. And I'm like, no, Idaho is known for the potatoes. Iowa is known for corn and beef. I grew up in a, educated household. My mom and dad met at the University of Minnesota. They graduated, they had master's degrees. My mom's a Delta. Obviously, I'm a legacy, so I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, and my dad's a Kappa. I didn't marry a Kappa man; I married a Q. But much to his chagrin, I grew up in an educated household in Iowa. I went to the first grade at 4 in a school district that had no Black children, and to add on top of that, I am Afro-Cuban. So my dad was half Cuban. And so I think we often speak about Black history, but we forget that there were slaves that got dropped off in Cuba, in Jamaica, and a lot of places. And the Afro-Cuban community is probably underrepresented. So I'm bilingual, and my name should be Mariquita when I go to Cuba to see my people, but it's Marietta in the United States. Look, I started my career off in an awkward way in IT, unlike Janet and JeffriAnne. I was a radio TV production major, and I wanted to be Oprah and Barbara Walters. And IBM came knocking on the door and said, let's give logic tests to these communications majors folks. And I passed the logic test. I don't know how, because I never set foot in the College of Business or Technology, and spent 5.5 years at IBM, and then went on to go to TCS, which is Tata, led a team of men from Pakistan and India to go to the next level. So I had hardware, software. I did software, Lotus development. and I spent 17 wonderful years at Microsoft. When I left, I was the highest ranking African American female at Microsoft, and did a wide variety of things. Was stationed in Chicago, Seattle, Detroit, Singapore, New York, and finally led the team here in Atlanta. And then I was on a national team. I led the Dynamics business when I thought I was going to retire, which is their CRM business for Latin America, the United States, and Canada. I stepped away from the business for about 3 years, and I now liken it to being called rewiring. I thought I was going to retire, and I don't
Like,
think I'll ever retire. And one of the things that Janet talked about that I think is super important is that I really talk about owning the seat at the table. I remember my first journey at IBM, and now I'm back. You know, I decided to come back as a managing director for Coca-Cola and Cardinal Health because I think I got bored and decided I needed to spend time back. Um, but I remember one of the branch managers I had the first time around, and we would prepare the executive to speak. It was a big mahogany room with a beautiful table in Peoria, Illinois. I was on the CAT team. And my branch manager said, Marita, why is it that you always kind of, you don't, you step, you're back, so you just kind of give the guys the information at the table and then you go back to your seat. And I said, because they're the leaders. And he said, I want you to learn, you've done the research, you've done the work. And next time I come into the room, I want to see you at the table. And so I speak a lot to women and women of color about what it really looks like to own a seat at the table. The journey for me hasn't been easy. Hopefully, I've made it a little better for others. Um, but I think it's super important for women to understand what it really looks like to own that seat at the table, and what are the pros and cons. So just a little
okay,
bit
so
about.
I love that. I love that you brought that up. And by the way, I just want to let you know that I am Sigma Gamma Rho. Hello.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, is that like saying I'm coming from Iowa?
No, I'm just, I was a gamete for a while. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, okay.
In fact,
My mom said, you're not going to do that.
I sent a note to my sorority sisters to say, like, hey, can some of you join us? Because I think it would be great. If not, we'll make sure they all get the link to meet all of you fantastic women. But yes, very, 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 very proud. But you say you help women get to the table.
Yeah.
All of you, I think, are about that. So tell me how you do that. And isn't it amazing we still have to do that? But we do. We do. So I'm gonna, and I'll do it this way. I'll leave it open. Just someone raise your hand and you can add to Marita's. Go ahead, Janet.
I'm so glad she ended her intro with that as well, because that is the discussion of the moment, is it not? Even more so with, I think, the current administration's focus on infrastructure and equity, and we can talk a little bit about what that means and translates into our respective spaces. So I am, in terms of making sure that women have the confidence, the executive presence, we can throw all the terminology out there that's used over time. That is, regardless of the competency, one of the challenges that women have felt in terms of a barrier, particularly if they're walking into a room of all men, particularly all white men. And those of us that are in this industry, technology particularly, that's the way we all grew up, right, Marita? We did. There was no example. We were the only woman, and typically the only person, for me, you might have someone of color, but they weren't Black, right? Or they were. So we kind of grew up knowing that and thinking that. I think my Army military upbringing, living around the world, like Marita, she's lived all over the country. We lived in Germany twice for 6 years, and a tour in Italy for 3 years. And what happens when you somewhat become, before I get into the question about what we're doing for women, but you end up somewhat in a bubble sometimes, right? And you think that you really forget, it sounds Pollyanna, but you become kind of maybe an American first, or part of your community that looks a certain way. And I did that all the way through high school, and went to my first public high school when I was a senior in high school. And it was a very different experience because I wasn't the only Black in the classroom, but I had a different experience. And so I had difficulties kind of integrating with the fact that these folks had all grown up in the same town and lived together. And here I'm coming in different. I became the first Black cheerleader. They'd never had one before at this particular school that was majority white. And there was a movement that I can talk about later that went along with that. You know, it was controversial. There were some problems associated with biases prior to me getting to that role. But once I got to that role as the first Black cheerleader, guess what happened next? I wasn't the last. So I became a champion for other qualified girls that needed to be on the squad. I serve as the first Black chair of WTS International. It is a international transportation organization that advances women in transportation. We'll have our conference in Atlanta in May, which I'm very much looking forward to. We focus a great deal on cradle to grave. We have a foundation that looks at that 12 to 18-year-old, but we also then have the developing careers for women. And I have, as president, set a platform that not only focuses on women, but diversifying our board, starting there. Because the board, if I'm the first Black chair, you can imagine that the board didn't look a lot like this picture either. So we've got the most diverse board in history, as well as the history making with the 45 years. Yes, and as well as kind of diversifying the demographics. And not only have I said, hey, it's great that we've got a Black and white diversity. I think we were like more than half Black at this point. We need to also take care of the other areas. So we need a representation from the other ethnic groups as well. So championing that at every opportunity that I get, as well as ensuring that women that, say, hey, look, that old adage, whether you say it's men have 30% of the skills and they go after that next job and women have 100, 110 and we don't, or whether it's 9 out of 10, we always talk about that, but really building confidence at every level. I think that we are, you'd be surprised, right, ladies, how senior executives lack this type of confidence, Marietta, to sit at the table or take a back seat, walk in there boldly like you're supposed to be there. And as women, I think I'll end with this. The other thing that we have to do that I'm sure we all practice is when that woman raises her hand, makes a comment, and it's almost like she was muted or didn't say it. Gentleman comes on next, they talk, and they acknowledge the fact that their comment, oh, great comment, Johnny, great job. We as women have to make sure that we stop and pause, whether we're leading the meeting or we're in the meeting, to say, I think Johnny, hold on a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Donna, what were you saying again? I think you made an excellent point. Let's go back to that. And so that's just an example. I'm sure we all do it, but it's really important to make sure that our voices are heard and that we're advocating when the person is in the room as well as when they're not in the room.
By the way, I always take notes. So if I think all of those are really important. My question when we say, okay, we have to take the table boldly, and we have to use our voices. Why are we still saying that? What is it in our collective culture that teaches us as young girls, young women, and even as grown-up women that that's not our automatic, right?
Well, I will tell you, one of the people, so I'm back into my career at IBM, right? And somebody said to me, and it was a white male, you suffer from the imposter syndrome, don't you? You feel like you've got to be the smartest person in the room because you're Black, and you're always being questioned. And I said to him, I don't suffer from any syndrome. I am who I am, and I actually resent you saying that. The fact of the matter is, I understand when I open my mouth, it's like E.F. Hutton. People are going to stop, they're going to listen, they're going to look at me, and they're going to question. And I've had it said to me, and I know JeffriAnne and Janet have, you're so articulate. The way you speak is so eloquent. And what does that mean? That is code for you don't speak in Ebonics. So whether you speak in Ebonics, whether you speak Southern, whether you speak Northern, Western, or Eastern, the point is what comes out of my mouth matters. How I deliver it is irrelevant. And we still suffer from that, and I want to just piggyback on something that Janet said. I'm going to give it to JeffriAnne. I am championing Black women on boards. I sit on 2 paid boards, right? So I've got my exit strategy in the works. We have to work on there. We are less than 3% in NASDAQ and the Fortune 500 on board seats. And
Yeah.
we have to strengthen Black women on the audit committees, the compensation committees, and all these things to get ready to be in a different seat. And I'm the only one. I'm the only one in the board.
But let me just say this. I hear you loud and clear, know the world, participate, get it. And yet there are people, maybe more people than we would expect, but not all that we would hope, who are looking for you, but they don't know how to find you.
Exactly.
Right. So what happens is they'll say, oh, I really want this person, but I can't find them. And then usually that happens here where I live. And I'm like, I have a list of 365 really talented, exceptional women that you could, 300, really? Are there that? Yes, because we are siloed in our worlds. So how do we bring our worlds together? You're the social scientist, JeffriAnne. How do we create a greater mix so that we can know each other for all of the strengths that we have, and therefore populate and contribute to all of the opportunities that there are in a much more diverse way?
Well, I think so often we spend so much time trying to change the individual and not the system, right? So when you spend a lot of time trying to, change yourself, change this other person, we are completely missing out on the system that's already in place that reifies and reproduces all of these inequities in the first place. So in addition to I feel so inspired just hearing, from the other two talk. And I want to recruit you to be a part of NC Wit in some way, because your voice would be so important. The really important thing to think about is how we disrupt systems.
Yes.
We have to disrupt systems in place that really reinforce and reward women for staying quiet. Systems in place that penalize women like ourselves for speaking up, owning our voice, not being afraid of that. I spent 10 years at the University of Florida as a sociologist sitting on the faculty there. And the entire decade that I was there, I was the only person that looked like me. And I learned very quickly that in order for me to feel good about who I am and what I was doing and how I was modeling, that I had to be a disruptor. But that comes at a cost,
Yes.
right? That comes at a cost. So no matter how much coaching we do and how much networking we do and all of those things that we do to work on ourselves, we have to learn how to disrupt those systems in place that continue to penalize Black women for showing up, casting women of color as being loud and yelling and all of these things, and penalizing us if we decide that we're actually not going to humble brag today, right? I'm gonna let y'all know that. And I also, right, speak intelligently because I have a PhD, but I have no problem jumping back and talking like I talk at the house, right? There's no problem with that either, right? We have to disrupt systems that penalize us for that kind of thing. We have to be okay with showing up as our true authentic selves and forcing the system to be okay with that too, right? I think that's a big piece of it as well.
I'd love to follow up on that, Donna, if I can. And I wanted to say quickly something else to what Marietta said, but I'd like to say, don't let the pearls fool you, right? JeffriAnne, as you're saying, don't get confused. And I think but being able, I think as my career has gone, I've also been able to deal with tact in a very interesting way. Winston Churchill has a saying or a quote from him that says, tact is being able to tell someone off without them knowing it. It's like, or a person that used to work with me said, you have a wonderful way of telling someone to go straight to hell, and they are smiling and going all the way there and not even realize that that's what just happened. And I think that as women and women of color that have that stereotype, being able to be very direct about clear about where your position is, but doing it in a way that you're smiling, and because you're not just talking to the person that has been offensive, you really are talking to an audience and an environment. So that group may not see what you picked up about Johnny making a slight or that offensive comment. So we have to be conscious of our brand and making sure that we're able to achieve both. So that so articulate comment that Marietta mentioned before, you almost get numb to it because it happens so much. But I do recall being on a panel recently with a mix of women about equity and all that. And that the person speaking after me says, I hate following Janet. She's a white female. She's always so articulate in the way that she presents. I mean, there was nothing, phenomenal about what I said besides a comment, but another white female at the end of the panel came up to me and said, I am so angry. You're sitting here talking about sensitivity and equity, and that comment was made. I, as a white woman, have never had in my career, and she was a PhD, JeffriAnne, anyone say to me that I'm so articulate, great point, so I think.
So let me ask you, unpack that a little bit, right? On one hand, does it always involve race? Is that always the code? Is that what we're hearing?
No, I think part of it is the femininity. Part of it is it possible for a female, regardless of color, to be able to bring a point up, and I think JeffriAnne spoke to this, that actually could resonate and not have a guy in the room come in and say, and I hear this all the time, I'll see women make a point and then a guy will say the same thing and they will acknowledge the point that Jessica made earlier. It's like, well, she said that. So what did you do? You said something different, or you said the exact same thing, and the room's like, well, Johnny said it, so therefore Johnny goes to the head of the class. And I just like, I don't know, JeffriAnne and Janet, but I'm at this point in my career when I'm just like, but Janet just said that.
Yes.
So let's acknowledge the fact that she said it, and Bobby just repeated it. He parroted what she said. And as women, we have to stand up and support each other. I don't care what color you are. When you're in a room of very few women, we have to help each other and support each other and acknowledge the difference. And in particular, women of color, because this is the dirty secret, Donna, that no one wants to ever talk about.
Please.
I have been dragged down by my sisters in so many instances where they're not happy that I got the promotion. They're not happy that I'm recognized for certain things. And it's almost like the old notion of crabs in a barrel. And we have to understand when one succeeds, it doesn't mean there's no room for the rest of us. There's so much room. Support each other, love each other, and help each other. I am amazed at what JeffriAnne and Janet have accomplished. I'm so excited for them. And they don't stop me from Marietta shine. I shine because they shine. And they shine so that my niece shines and my great niece shines. And I think we miss that. You shine, Donna, and I'm proud of that. You were at the NBA All-Star game. There aren't that many women that get there, and you were kicking butt. I just feel like we have to support each other, and we don't. And that breaks my heart.
I agree. I agree. I always like to say life is a team sport. We're going to come back to talking to boards, Jen. I'm going to come back to you in a second. Go ahead, JeffriAnne.
I also want to ensure that Janet has a chance to kind of close the loop in her comment, because I want to be able to, I want to hear what else she had to say too. But I also want to address really quickly, Donna, the notion of, is our being articulate really about race? It is Black History Month, and I know that we're going to jump into that a little bit later, but it's really important for us to kind of take a step back and think about articulate really is a synonym for smart, okay, and intellectual. And it's really important to think about how historically people that look like us were not afforded an education, first of all, and the messaging around our intellectual aptitude and ability has always been about being inferior and less than. So in other words, when people come across us and we're talking and it sounds smart, and when people say, oh, you're so articulate, or oh my gosh, you have a PhD, good for you. It to me, it's always kind of like a dig, but what that really means is that people aren't expecting us to be smart,
Right.
and to have any capacity for anything intellectual,
Sure.
or more importantly,
Yeah, keep going.
somebody else, right? So
Right.
I kind of just want to throw that in there. And Janet, I just want to toss it back to you because I know.
Janet, hold on one second. Let me just welcome everybody to Refresh, Generation W's Refresh, presented by Circle K. We're having a wonderful conversation with these amazing, accomplished women, and we're celebrating Black History Month as well. Okay, Janet was talking about board diversity, and you wanted to put I think a period on the sentence. So let's go back to you.
Thank you, JeffriAnne, and thank you, Donna. Marietta, you talked about serving on board, and so perhaps, and I'm in terms of Black women, and then we can talk about women. It's shameful. This is just for women overall, and certainly for Black women. And just of this group, and JeffriAnne, you may serve on a paid board as well. I just received my first paid board appointment.
Bravo!
And thank you, and congratulations to you, Marietta, for having two. My goal is to add one more while I'm working. It is part of not just, it's continuing to do the retirement strategy, but also it's my strategy being retired, because I can serve till age 75 or 15 years. So but there's so much sharing of information, which is why this conversation is so vital, because though they say they can't find any women or people of color, it's because it's such a network of folk that stick together. Typically it's been men, but the statistics show once one woman or women get on a board, whether it's paid or not for profit, but certainly for paid, then we absolutely should and oftentimes advocate for other women. We can't let corporations we've got the diversity box checked because we have two white females on the board, and that's really real talk. You need to have more than, so within the diversity is critical. But I would say that part of the process that all of us need to be thinking about, the people that are interested in boards, and Marietta, you can probably speak to this better than I can, it's also about ensuring that you have an area that you have governance experience, which you can gain through nonprofit board roles. So get those officer roles and gain your governance experience. Work on boards where there are paid staff, so that you can say that you have, been a chair of a board that has a CEO, and then know that you've got an area of expertise that's meaningful to that particular board, and let people know that you're interested in board service, right, Marietta? I think that's really important, is that you say, hey, great, how did you get on that board? Yeah, I'm interested. So
absolutely. And I'm going to promote actually she's the former chairman of our board at Generation W. She's still on our board, and that's Lisa Shallett, who created an organization called Extraordinary Women on Boards. For all of you as well, if you're on a board, it is a collection which is growing all the time of women who sit on boards of representing every ethnicity and race, and it's about board learning as well as social connection, and I found it to be incredibly valuable, and it's that sorority community, that sisterhood that supports each other, which is also really nice. Let me
just
raise my hand,
Donna. Let me just throw this out there. Black women on boards. They were at the New York Stock Exchange. They rang the bell. Many of us that are part of technology, Salesforce, IBM, many Black CIOs, Roz Brewer, who's the CEO of Walgreens, Ursula Burns is there.
Love Ursula.
There are many places we can go to, and our companies need to support us. So I want to put a plug in for Black women on boards.
You got it. You just did. It was awesome. Yes, please, JeffriAnne.
I'm putting a plug in. I sit on some nonprofit boards, but I have never sat on a paid board, and I'm interested. So I'm putting myself out there as a network to say this is something I'd love to participate in.
I would love to help you. I would love to help both of you, because it's tricky, and it's tricky. I would love to help both of you.
What about all three of us? Hello. All right.
But you're like a dynamo.
I'm so interested in language and the coding of language, the perception of coded language, and how that both helps and hinders open conversation among friends who are are asking questions that they're really interested in and yet can be perceived as being a microaggression of some sort, right? How do we bring this group together? And I'm gonna start this part of our conversation off with, it is Black History Month. Why is Black History Month so important to you? Because we have been told, or we are hearing, that perhaps Black History Month has had its day. Certainly in certain states, we've been told that, you know, there is no such thing as Black History Month. It's all history.
Can I jump in here as the educator, right? So let me just throw some things out here I think are really, really important. So I love the point you just teed up, Donna, this notion that we're over Black history, or we're past that. Even, Black history didn't start off as a month, it started off as a week. It did not become a month until 1970. I was born in 1976. I'm 46. Okay, so to say that Black History Month is old and over, first of all, I don't feel like I'm old, but that just lets us know we really haven't been celebrating Black History Month that long. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and that's where I am right now. And the first recorded Black History Month celebration was here in my backyard at Kent State University. So that's really important. I was back in 1970. Secondly, Black history really isn't, when people think about Black history, it evokes a lot of negative emotions, right? And folks don't want to feel uncomfortable. They don't want to feel frustrated. They don't want to feel vulnerable or feel like pain. Black history is really about celebrating the accomplishments of Black excellence, past and present. And it's about focusing on progress and not pain. And to your point, Donna, Black History Month really is American history. But until we get to a point where we can readily see Black history showing up in our lives every day, we still need a month to pause and reflect in the same way that we need March for Women's History, May for Asian American Pacific Islander Month, May also for Jewish Heritage, on and on and on. We still need those times to pause and reflect on all of our history, but really lifting up the positive and unique experiences of Black folks really across the diaspora, right? So not just here in the US, but everywhere, because that's important for all of us to move forward in progress. It's all of our history, right? I still think we really, really need it.
I just want to jump in here just to add to what you said, JeffriAnne. It's really about all our histories. I have two sons that have autism. So a lot of people don't want to acknowledge that April is Autism Awareness Month. And then they kind of want to lump it into Neurodiversity Month. My sons are on the spectrum, deep on the spectrum. One works for AWS. He's amazing. He's got amazing savant skills. And I believe his success should be represented. But when people think about Black History Month, in my opinion, part of the reason it makes the majority feel uncomfortable is that it ties back to what happened. My last name's Colston. Anybody does any history? Edward Colston from Bristol, England, was the greatest and the most notorious slave trader in England. I've done my 23andMe. I go back to that, and he sent slaves to Cuba. So there is a direct lineage between one of the most notorious slave traders and me. And I don't think whatever happened was probably from a consent perspective. But the fact of the matter is, I'm standing. I'm still here. Let's not focus in on what that lineage meant. Let's talk about where I am today. And I think people forget Black history is about celebrating JeffriAnne, Janet, Marietta, Donna, Chantel Davis, all of us, about where we are and what our journey looks like today. And I think sometimes the majority is like, well, I want to brush through that because I don't want to feel bad about slavery and what it meant and critical race theory and all that other stuff. The fact of the matter is that is history. It happened and you need to know it. But look at where we are now. And let's talk about Mae Jemison and all the other Black women that are strong that need to be highlighted next month in March and not just in February. So to me, I do February, March, and April. and then I celebrate it all year long. So I stand on that. I stand on that with my sisters on the panel. So I'm done.
Love it. Love it. Janet, how about you?
Yeah, well said all the way around, and I don't know that can add a whole lot more to it besides the fact that it is part of American history. And growing up in a military environment, I did not get exposed to the degree that I wish that I had of African American studies and history until I went to college. And so it is a very important, it's not about people feeling bad. I mean, certainly it's, you can look at world history and there's a lot there to make you feel bad about a lot of things, right? As you think about various wars and, religious wars and all of that. So I think it's an important intellectual component, let alone the fact that we understand where we are today. You don't repeat the past either. That's really important. It's part of learning history. In college, when I had my first African American studies teacher class, that was taught by a Polish professor, because there was no African American or Black that was available to teach this course. Learned so much from that course, and things that I thought I was really embarrassed that I didn't know, that wasn't taught growing up, or whether it was about authors or it's to Marieta's point, it's so much more than slavery. It's really the journey that we're talking about. It's the journey of a class of people in 1900s, 1800s, and business owners, doctors, lawyers. I mean, it is fascinating, the other good stuff as well as the bad stuff. And you have to tell the whole story. I think it's inspirational, it's motivational, and it really is. And we've got so much more look, there's going to be history told about us today, history from 20 years ago, 20 years into the future, when we're all retired or gone, that we'll talk about people of color, Black history, and women, and how we've continued to advance. Maybe there'll be a discussion one day that's no longer about the fact that only one of us is in a room and that we're the first. I am praying and looking forward to that. But that's why we need Black history, so that we can elevate that into the overall discussion, because it is not part of the mainstream discussion, and it's an important part of our history.
Right. And in part of that, beautifully said, by the way, all of you, but as part of that, we have to make sure that everyone feels welcomed into the conversation, right? As well as people in the conversation stepping out, right? Does that make sense? I know for me, it's funny, you reminded me, I totally forgot this, Janet. Janet, was when I was in college, I decided to take an African history course. I didn't think twice. I loved history. Little did I was the only white person in the class. I didn't think about who would be in the class. I was interested in the topic, right? And then I'm thinking, should I not be in this class? Is this a class only for people of color? And all of these things that go on in our brains that we wish didn't, surface up. If we can talk about them, right? If we can engage each other, if we can hold each other's hands and say, help me understand this better, then aren't we that much better off? Because we made a commitment to this great American experiment of diversity.
Yes.
Right? I mean, we have committed to it. So why don't we make the most of it? What are we so afraid of? That's a real question.
We're always afraid of change. We're always afraid of things that are different. America is really about, fear. I feel like, no disrespect, and I don't want to disrespect anybody on the phone, but your governor in Florida is very interesting to me. What is the fear of teaching Black history? And I don't like it to be labeled critical race theory. There was a lot of efforts in Georgia to flip a state that is very deep of African Americans, and it went from red to blue. And people feel like it didn't go that direction. I'm from Iowa. That used to be a blue state, and now it's red. And I lived in Washington and Seattle, which is a blue state. We are afraid of things that we don't know. And like today, when I go to a meeting and I've got all this hair, people are like, well, that's a lot. Marietta is coming in with the most. And at this point in my life, Marieta's coming in the way she wants to, because I've earned my seat at the table.
Yes.
I've kicked ass in a whole lot of places, and you're not going to tell me I can't wear my big earrings, I can't wear my big glasses, and I can't wear my big hair. Because what I have to say and what I've been through is more important than not. And it's the fear of I'm going to have a spear, or I'm going to go into some Black Panther dance. And Angela Davis, I love her. My sorority sister. I'm going to go and somehow take over the masses. My hair has nothing to do with it. Stop about my hair. Listen to what I have to say. And so I think it's about fear. And for my young sisters out there, you wear your hair any way you want to wear it. You want to wear it in locks, you want to wear it in braids, you want to wear it poofy like mine. Do what you want to do, but don't allow yourself to feel like you have to look European. You look the way you want to look. So that's me.
Wow. We're out of time. I don't know if anyone wants to have another closing remark. I think that was pretty powerful, Marietta. Janet, JeffriAnne, I'll give you that opportunity. Learning question. Is it okay for someone to say they love your hair or earrings or just not say anything? By the way, that is a great question, Amber, right? I think your hair is amazing. Now, if I say your hair is amazing, are you going to go on some other show and said, there was this white woman who was commenting on my hair? Or could it just be like, I loved your hair and I'm loving you and that's okay? Thank you, Amber.
I think it's perfectly fine. I mean, I've been in situations and as Marisa talked about, I'm always changing my hair, and I have always had people make comments about it in a negative way, like, oh, you changed your hair again. I did. Yes, I did. And I think it's okay to do the most. So, when someone is being complimentary, I think we feel that, right? We can feel when someone is paying us a compliment, as opposed to, how it feels when someone is insulting you. So I think it's perfectly okay to pay a compliment or ask a question, right? Oh my gosh, how did they do that? Or, oh my gosh, how long did that take? That's perfectly fine, right? People just want to know, and that's okay. It's not okay to, oh, can I touch your hair? That feels different.
Right. Totally agree. Janet, any closing comments? Because I'm going to wrap us up.
Sure. And I would say that getting back to the discussion about whether it be Florida, other states that have decided that ED&I is not appropriate to teach in school. And I use ED&I because it's not just about Black History Month. It's not just about Don't Say Gay. I mean, there's a whole lot of packaging, a lot of things to unpack with that discussion. The reason that we also bring light and visibility and line of sight, obviously, to diversity and inclusion issues because there's not any, where there are places that there haven't been. And we have to raise that awareness about why that is important, whether it's an economic discussion about business and growth and development, but our outside of just ensuring that you are a reflection as a company of your community that you serve. But there's a lot of reasons why we ensure that even the federal government, why a percentage of contracts must go to women-owned businesses or minority-owned businesses to ensure that they have an opportunity to participate in businesses, because otherwise there's not equity in the way the representation is shown, whether it be a paid board or whether it be a leadership role or whether it's in business.
Totally. And all of us, I don't care what your color is, right? What your ethnicity is, everybody wants to be seen for who they are. And we need help in recognizing, right, that we don't necessarily see everybody because not everybody is within our range of eyesight at times or in our living experience. That is why we live in such a beautiful, opportunistic country, because we have all of this opportunity to live and learn more. And so I just want to thank all of you for this incredible time, your energy, your positivity, your beautiful hair. How about that? And we will be back on March 8th with Refresh, presented by Circle K. We'll be celebrating International Women's Day. Richard, if you're going to be with us, let us know because we want to talk to you. All of the men and women also that will celebrate us. There's a preview. We'll talk about Generation W in our theater. And of course, we will powerfully curate an incredible live stream, March 24th. As we said, it's a day you owe yourself, and it's a day that lasts more than a year, actually years, for any of those who participated, but we're really looking forward to the positive and the possible. Of course, JeffriAnne, and Marita and Janet. We'd love for you to join us. And for all of you, we'll see you back again on March 8th. I just want to thank in particular Sherry Levin, who's been our producer, who's been in bed sick all week. And also very, very special on our team, Bridget Allen, as we were talking about creative, said, why don't we celebrate Black History Month? And Chantel Davis, who jumped right in and said, yes, I know some great women, and I can't thank them enough for using their voices continuously to make us all better. So thanks to the team, thanks to all of you, thanks to everyone who's joined us out there in Facebook land, as well as on our Zoom. Everyone have a great week.